Hi, everybody, and welcome to our second edition of Women, Emotions, Identity, and Love. And thank you for joining us here today. And we are excited to have another edition and with our emphasis on identity today. Last week was emotions, and now we're going to slant just a little bit more towards Marianne's expertise of identity. I did want to lay down a couple of ground rules that we didn't talk about last week, so we're going to just kind of go over that this week, and that is that always we should be respectful, friendly, and kind. That's certainly great groundwork for a community, a supportive community that we're trying to build here. Also, no self-promotion. We're just going to stay focused on the discussion at hand, and we'll start the webinar with Marianne sending us off with identity, and then I will and Gayla will comment, and then we'll start answering questions that we get in the chat box. So if you have questions, please make sure you type them into the chat box so we can address your questions over the next 45 minutes or so. All right, Marianne, I would like to introduce you as our identity coach, and please get us started today.
All righty. Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the webinar number 2. And I'm going to talk about identity, like Vivian said. And identity is largely concerned with the questions, who are we and who are we allowed to be? And understanding these two questions can sometimes be tricky. They can be confusing because they're always changing. And it's hard to keep up. But what we can do to keep up with the changes is that we can try to get as much needed knowledge as we can, and to be at least aware of who we are. When we talk about identity, it's not only about the ego and the self, although we might think that we are in control over who we are and who we are allowed to be. We are actually heavily influenced by others' thoughts and assumptions of who we are and how they see us. And I think this has a great impact on who we are allowed to be. And I just want to share a little bit about me and how I see who I am and how it has how my experiences have impacted on me. I started out as Marianne Melring. That was my given name. And when I got married, I became Mrs. Rothmann. And I took my then husband's last name without even thinking about it. I didn't think what it would do to me. But as it turned out, being Mrs. David Rothmann heavily influenced who I came to be. All of a sudden, I guess I was just a shadow of my then husband. I had his social security number. On invitations, it would say Mr. and Mrs. David Rothmann. And I didn't think about much of it at the time. But as I have studied and researched identity, I keep thinking of who I was, and I have come to the conclusion that I lost myself. I was no longer me. Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought here, but I also felt strange about it, and I kept asking questions about why was it so important for everybody in the military to all the wives to be addressed as their husband's shadow. And so this experience has definitely, I guess, programmed me into being codependent, if you will. And I have worked very hard to get out of, to understand myself and to be proud of who I am. And it has taken a while, and it's taking a little bit of a toll on relationships, because I had to find myself. So Vivian, my question to you would be, what do you think about what I just said in terms of thoughts and emotions?
Well, Marianne, I totally understand the feeling of losing yourself. I think women, when we get married, or at least it used to be. I think things are changing finally a little bit, but back in our day, the expectation was right away to take your husband's last name and to be, like you said, in his shadow. And you're right. I mean, as far as emotionally, I think emotions, whenever we have any kind of conflict within ourselves, which you said you kind of questioned that, and you kind of felt not great about that decision later as you became your own person again, and you realized that you kind of gave that piece of yourself away. And when we're having to deal with something like that we have to question, going through our emotions and processing our emotions and how we feel about it is exactly what we need to do in order to regain ourselves and our identity. Now, some women, are really glad to get a new name because they've had maybe a situation in their family. They don't want to, they want to separate themselves from their family, their background or whatever, and who they were. And they want to take on that new identity, and they're really happy to do that. So however you approach it, part of knowing who you are is the ability to process your emotions and make good decisions within yourself for what works for you.
Yeah.
And that you didn't really look into that piece of yourself. You didn't, and you said it took a toll, and it took a toll because when you were rebuilding your life after your divorce and whatnot, you realized you had lost part of your identity. And that, that is, well, Gayla, I'm sure, can tell us of how common that little scenario is, right?
Yes, it is absolutely common. And I know I lived through that as well, in that I felt like during a large part of my first marriage, a 23-year marriage, that there was this big pushback on me for wanting to be myself and establish my own identity. In fact, when I tried to evolve as a person and go on a spiritual growth journey for myself, I was reading lots of different books like Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and, and others. And I came home one day and I couldn't find my books. And so I asked my former husband, hey, where are my books? And he said, you don't need to be reading that stuff. And I found out that he had taken my books and he had hidden them in the closet, which only made me determined to leave him, because if he hadn't pushed back on me so hard about having my own identity, maybe that wouldn't have happened, because I didn't really know where I was going to end up, but I wanted to evolve myself. And so when we're in relationship, it does affect our identity. But the good news is, as modern women, we have some choices today that maybe my mother didn't have, or my grandmother didn't have, and our grandmothers didn't have. We have some choices to say, hey, this is a modern marriage. I am your equal partner. What I bring to the table is different from what you bring to the table, but we're this unit that makes decisions together, and you can form your own rules of your family and what gets talked about, and who has the freedom to do whatever. You can make out of it what you want. And I think we've made different relationships certainly than our mothers did. But when I was thinking about this whole thing of identity, I just wanted to say that it occurred to me, we're born with an identity. We are born, well, there are mainly women on this call. So our first identity is we're a baby girl. And then, maybe we are a white baby girl, we're a black baby girl, we're a Chinese baby girl. We grow up to maybe be a straight woman, we grow up to be a gay woman, whatever it is. Those are identities that we don't, we're blessed with them, and hopefully we accept them. Maybe we're a 4 foot tall woman, maybe we're 5 feet, maybe we're 6 feet. Those are things we're not going to do a lot about. So we accept identities that we're given, and then our family of origin tries to give us identities. And some of those we accept, and some of those we'll be like, yeah, that doesn't really work for me. I know in my family, they would have loved it if I stayed in this little teeny tiny hometown and had this identity as this housewife, and maybe did an acceptable career, like be a teacher or nurse or something like that. And all my life, I pushed back against that. I'm like, no, I'm out of here. That's not who I am. I'm living in a city with cultural activities, so I can go to a museum. I'm getting a degree. No, I reject this small town. I'll just be a housewife and raise the kids' identity. And so that created problems. And so I think when we, as you pointed out, in your experience, Marianne, when we choose to take on a different identity than what society would have us have, or what our family of origin wants us to have, that's where we can get some pushback.
Because what I'm trying to say with is that I didn't, when I'm thinking back now, I don't feel really that I was, good or bad, right or wrong, I didn't really feel that I was allowed to be who I want to be. Did I want to be Mrs. Rothmann, Mrs. David Rothmann? I didn't really think about it at the time, but I wanted to just be me. I just wanted to just be Marianne. I wanted to be grow on my own, not just tell me who I'm supposed to be. And that's when I talk about who am I allowed to be. And that's where we think that identity is something that we have control over. Our self-identity is something we have control over. And that's what I was trying to say earlier, that it's the outer influence, people wanting us to be something, really impacts on who we are and who we are allowed to be.
And you're not just,
I'm sorry, Vivian.
It doesn't just mean in marriage. It's any circumstance, any exterior force, right, Marianne, that
absolutely
defines us.
Yeah. And depending also, again, what we have experienced, what we have experienced in the past, where, like what you said, it's like, that's when our emotions come in. And sometimes we might not be strong enough to say, time out, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. I want to do it this way. But we might not be strong enough. And then for Gayla, I think that's when we struggle a little bit with how our relationships turn out. Do we settle, or what do we do?
Right. Well, and you talk about, Marianne, you talk about how, refugees coming in and other women in other countries, and how they're trying to figure out who they are in a completely different culture, or moving. And you're a foreigner who has lived in other countries and other cultures, and how you feel out of place because of what your perceived identity is, and then what is the expectation in that separate culture. It runs through everything.
Definitely. And then also being a minority versus, say, my majority, like in Saudi Arabia, I was a minority. in America. Partly, I guess I'm part of the majority. And it really, again, plays a role in who you are allowed to be. Who am I and who am I allowed to be? It really plays a part. Again, others coming in telling you who you need to be. And it's when you are especially the minority, it's a lot harder to have the opportunity to actually be who you want to be.
Absolutely.
Sure. I'm sorry, did you want to say something, Vivian?
No, I was just agreeing with that.
Oh, okay. And to me, that brings up the point that, we live in a time where I think we have some more choices. And I think it's time for us, especially now in the turmoil that we live in, is, I like the questions that you were bringing up last time, Marianne. It's okay to ask ourselves, and maybe it's really important to ask ourselves, who do I really want to be in the world? And I think there's a lot of pressure to be a certain way on certain issues and certain world events. But ask yourself, who do you want to be? And I'm hoping that the women of the world really want to stand up and say, I want to be part of the solution. I want to be part of the kindness and love in the world. I want to be for justice. I want to be for equality. And we're tired of all these other paradigms that have created so much pain for other people and segments of our population. Mm-hmm. And I know that's what I want to do. I want to stand up for what's right. And when something happens in my presence and I feel someone's being mistreated, I feel a renewed sense of I'm not going to put up with that. That's not going to happen, on my watch, so to speak. And I'm going to be part of helping people to gently shift their ideas and their paradigms and realize if you have had old ideas in your head that are just not right, it's time to educate yourself.
Right.
Yeah, it's time to educate yourself and realize that everyone has the right to be who they are as long as they're not hurting you. It could be against whatever your religious beliefs are. Their life has nothing to do with you, and your religious beliefs have nothing to do with other people. So if it's not hurting you, then what are you carrying on about something for? We just need to be, and I think women are uniquely positioned because we're by nature, most of us are nurturing.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's helped me solidify my identity as a loving, nurturing person who stands for justice. And you know what? I get to be who I want to be.
Yeah. There's nothing better than that. We've got a couple of really good questions, two really good questions. And one of them, I'm going to start with this one because we're kind of still on this topic a little bit. One of our guests has asked you, Marianne, to talk a little bit more about you mentioned codependency. And she is asking, how do you start that process when you have focused too much on your marriage and other people's needs and you've kind of lost yourself and your identity? How can you give her some ideas on how to start rebuilding herself back up to who she is?
Yeah. And sorry if I look kind of funny right now because I'm on my phone, so it's really hard for me to have a lot of.
You're frozen here, so.
Oh, I'm frozen?
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm going
hear
to,
you.
But it might be because I'm I want to make sure that I answer the question. I think how you can start understanding the codependencies is exactly that, by understanding that you are codependent and everything that you have done for your family. And sometimes people say to me, you have to be a little bit more selfish. And sometimes I don't like that word, selfish. But I have come to understand that it doesn't necessarily means that that it's something negative. Like I left my daughter and my grandchildren in Colorado, and I moved to Holland, and later on I moved to Saudi Arabia. And I felt really, really guilty. I felt really guilty that I was being selfish. But I have come to understand that if I'm not selfish, then I'm just going to go in the same route. I'm just going to keep going and never grow. And so that's the starting process, to realize that you are codependent, and kind of self-reflect on what makes you codependent, because you are ultimately responsible for your codependency. Everybody is responsible for their codependency. But recognize it, and then think about what you can do. If it means you have to be selfish and do what you want to do, then do it. Let me turn this phone back on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, part of that, I think Marianne makes a really good point where she says, well, first of all, you have to take responsibility, of course, of your own feelings and where you are, but to look at why you're in that situation, and it's kind of like the frog in the boiling water. I mean, it happens very slowly. The water's warm, and then it gets warmer, and before you know it, the frog is boiling, and it happens that slowly that you don't, it's not something that one day you wake up and it's like, oh, I'm dependent now, codependent, or I've lost myself completely to my husband and my family. And it just happens over time. It's insidious that way. It just kind of happens. And so the fact that you're realizing that, and that you're coming back to, oh, you know what? I'm lost. I've lost myself, and I need to get a hold of that situation. And part of that, of course, I'm going to say, is processing your emotions around that.
Exactly.
A loss of any kind is going to create grief. And so you need to go through that process of, wow, I lost this. I'm sad about it, whatever your feelings are, and then regain yourself through embracing how you're feeling and regaining yourself that way.
Can you hear me now, Vivian?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, because what I wanted to say too is, you have to, and again with the emotions, you have to let go of that feeling of guilt. And it is, like you said, Vivian, it is a process that takes time. It's not overnight. So you have to realize what exactly it is that you want to accomplish. What is it that you have a passion for? And then slowly but surely do it. Just do it, so you can grow, challenge yourself and grow. And that's how you I think also it's really good, if you want to keep being married, that you actually find yourself, because otherwise I think there's going to be resentment, and you even, I mean, sometimes you grow together with your husband and sometimes you don't. So you have to find that fine line where you either you grow together, you grow separate, but you can still come together as one at some point, if that makes sense.
I really like the fact that you brought that up, Marianne, because I think it's an important point that just because you want to evolve and change as a person doesn't mean anything with respect to your relationship. Your relationship can go on, your relationship can get better and stronger. But I will say, when you're in this situation, you might feel like you're in turmoil and you don't know what to do, and you don't know how your partner, your husband, will react to a new you. It's really important to talk about it. And I tell women, there is no substitute for good communication. And that sometimes is lacking in marriage, because we don't talk until somebody's frustrated and then somebody's snippy or angry, and so they don't have a productive conversation. So it's important to learn the skill in your relationship to say, I have something I'd really like to run by you. I mean, that's a little trick that I teach women, because if you say to a man, we need to talk, they They're so freaked out. They don't know if they did something wrong, they're going to get in trouble. So they immediately are on defensive. So don't say to a man, we need to talk. I mean, it better be really bad if you say that to a guy. So say something like, hi, honey, I have something I want to run by you. When in reality, we need to talk about this. But if you say that, they're like, oh, she's going to be asking my opinion about something. She wants to know what I think. So they're like, oh, okay. I can be the big man on campus for a minute, and you'll get their attention, and you'll get them to maybe hear you and just say, if you're feeling X. And remember, it's not about them, it's about you. Say, I have been feeling, not you. And when you did this, begin by, I feel this way when this happened. And it may be something he did or didn't do. But, sort of back to the what to do here, I think it's really, I think what you said, Marianne, first you have to recognize where you are. You have to realize it. And then you have to ask yourself some questions. And then what Vivian said about, there's been a lot of emotion around it, and you need to deal with your own emotions. Because, blasting your own emotions all over your family or your husband is not that successful. You need to have some grip on how to talk about that, and when you are able to talk about that. And to me, you need to make a plan. You need to take an action. And lastly, I'd just like to say that it's not selfish to love yourself. It's really not. Self-love is something that's critical, because it's like me trying to help you. If you're thirsty and I come to you with an empty cup, I'm not helping you very much. I have to fill up my own cup so that I'm together, I feel happy and healthy, and then I can help you from a place of abundance.
Yeah, that's an awesome analogy. We have another question, and it's a different arena, but I can certainly relate to this. Our guest talks about how her identity was lost when she was a child due to a lot of verbal abuse. And I totally relate to that. I think we all can, unfortunately, through judgmental statements from her mother, and her father and brother were verbally abusive. And so she has no concept, really. I mean, when you're in that situation, you are beaten down and you don't have any concept of who you are. I totally, like I said, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family as well. And it took me years into my adulthood to finally figure out my identity and how to get past all that judgment and all that abuse that I suffered when I was a child. Marianne, do you have some thoughts on building your identity from that standpoint?
Well, I think the thing is that when you have been verbally abused, when you have been abused at all, it is your identity. It is who you are. And so what you have to do is you have to work that into, easier said than done. It is easier said than done, but utilize it to something positive, as hard as it may be, because it is who you are. You were abused. You were not treated right, and it's something in your mind. So you can use it to, I think the positive in this is that when you have that kind of experience, I think you become beautiful people, because you have more empathy for other people. And then you build on that to something like help other people, talk to other people, make something positive out of it. And when you do that, then I think you do feel better about yourself. You still have the emotional baggage. You still are sad and have a hard time with understanding it, but it is who you are. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Yeah.
And what I think the trick is getting past the identity of being a victim. And
Absolutely, Vivian. Absolutely,
and
Vivian.
empowering yourself and saying, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm not going to let this part of my past affect me anymore. And that's exactly what I work on all the time with my clients, healing childhood trauma, because that is unfortunately where it starts, and that's where it's, comes from. And you have to reframe, you have to shut up those little voices in your head that are telling you you're not good enough. You have to, it's a process, and it does, all this work does not happen overnight, but being aware of it, knowing where you have been and where you want to be, and starting on that journey of moving forward. And part of that is processing, grieving the past, and going on a gratefulness and a forgiveness journey. That those two things have helped me so much in my life, to forgive those people. They didn't know any better. Maybe they too were wounded, and they passed that woundedness onto you. It doesn't really belong to you. That's the first thing you got to recognize, is it just doesn't belong to you. That's their stuff. And so if you can shed that out of your identity and create your own new identity that's empowered, that is joyful. I mean, that's the journey. And that's like you said, Marianne, it makes you such a better person. And part of that journey can be reaching out and helping others. That's certainly the direction I chose. What do you think about all that, Gayla?
Well, I think that your comment about the fact that it does not belong to you, it was not really about you. It was about their woundedness and their issues. And so I guess the thing that I want to say about that is, I don't know who said this, but somebody said this, that when we really fully come to realize that the past is the past, and there is not one earthly thing any of us are going to do to change it, any more than we're going to change how tall we are, we can just accept the fact that that's the past. And then the person who said the saying, the future is a dream. We can't spend our whole life living in the future. What we have is the present. And it's called the present because it's a gift. And I thought that was kind of cool. We have the present moment. And we can spend the rest of our lives thinking about the past and why did that happen and how come they did that and I just don't understand it and that was just horrible behavior. We can spend a lot of time doing that, or we can say, you know what, I'm putting that in the past. And I will share a little technique that I use with my clients that actually is super powerful technique. But if you write down all of those things that you're feeling, just take out a sheet of paper and you'll write them down. And then you'll look at them. You'll find that you wrote those things about how you're feeling. You wrote them in the present tense because you are feeling them now. And so when you look at your list and you see that you wrote those things in the present tense, one of the tricks that I teach people that's actually very powerful, take that list and rewrite it and put every single thing you wrote in the past tense. It tells your mind, your subconscious, it helps your subconscious move that out of your present and into the past. And then, we do a lot of other steps in my program, but that really can help you psychologically know this is not me today. That was in the past. I felt that then. You're mine now. And actually police use that. I mean, highly, highly trained police, not normal. Yeah, very, very
and
highly.
The past is very important. And in no way do I believe that we should just throw away the past, because the past is who we are. But what we can do today is we can make the future better, if you will. If we can understand the past, we work with it today, and we can make it better for the future. And that's what is that's crucial. That's the crucial part of growing, of challenging yourself
Well,
and growing as a person.
she says that she has already done all that. She's happy and she's forgiven her past, but what she really wants help with is even, and I understand what she's saying. She's done all of this, but she still doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. She still doesn't feel like she has found her identity today. So how can we give her constructive steps to finding her identity today after having gone through that?
Number one is she has to find, number one, find your passion. Find what you really want to do and be honest with yourself, and then work towards accomplish that goal. And then step number two will come automatically, because then you will feel better about yourself, and you will feel that you have a purpose. You will have a purpose.
I think sometimes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Gayla.
I think sometimes women, I've had women say, well, I don't really know what my passion is. And so to that I say, try something. Try something. I mean, make a list of things that you think you might want to try. I mean, I've done that in the past, and I thought, well, I really want to try baking, or I really want to try sewing, or I really want to try making a quilt. I've tried things, and then I'm like, well, I tried that, and then, no, that's not really it. So I think sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. And so think about what maybe brought you joy as a child. That might give you a hint about something that you really like to do. I mean, for me, I didn't come upon what I'm doing today for decades. And even then, I wasn't sure I could do it. I mean, a little story from the past is when I just finally decided to move from my career in corporate security to writing a book. I was in the middle of writing a book, probably more than in the middle. I'm probably almost done with the book. And someone asked me about it and what I was doing. And I said, oh, I'm writing a book. And she said, oh, are you an author? And I literally said no. Because I had not embraced that identity as an author. So it's a process. I mean, to me, the best advice is try something. And you may think, oh yeah, now that I learned how to do it. When I first started baking, especially living in Colorado, you mess up stuff so much, you're about ready to give it up because of the altitude affects baking. But, I really love to bake things. And so I found that out, and I found out that, I just had to practice it a little bit. So try something and practice it, and then don't beat yourself up if you think, well, after all, I thought that I wanted to do that, but now that I've done it and I've got maybe a little bit better at it, I don't even want to do that thing. It's okay to try different things. Yep.
I knew that for a long time, living in America and living in Colorado, I knew for a long time that it was not for me. But I stayed there, and I stayed there because I was married. I have my daughter there. I have my grandchildren there. So I stayed and I stayed and I stayed. And I sat there in my chair, and I was looking out the window, and I just felt so empty inside. I knew for a long time that I wanted to travel. I knew that I wanted to see more of the world. And I was sitting there thinking, I can't do that. How am I going to travel? It's just a crazy thought. But then one day I said, okay, I'm going to sell my apartment. I'm going to sell my car. I'm going to pack up my things, and I'm going to travel. And it was very, very scary. No doubt about it. It was very scary, but I did it. And then once I took the first step, it just it's a domino effect. Oh, I tried this. So I went to Holland. I got a teaching certificate. It wasn't in my plans, but it just kind of happened because I moved there, and then I took myself a certificate. And then all of a sudden I was in Saudi Arabia teaching at a university. And I never dreamt that would happen. But because I took the first step, everything just kind of came in place, because I guess it was just meant for it to happen. And I think you just have to take chances.
Mhm.
And that's what, it's not easy. It's not easy. It can be hard. And like I said, you feel guilty at times. You feel scared. Is this really going to work? Sometimes you get too comfortable in where you are right now. And so to answer the question, how do I find my passion? Well, do some self-reflection. What exactly do I like? What do I like to do? And then you just have to take the chances. And if a chance comes up, and sometimes it's hard work, you simply just have to try it if you want to do it. If you want to see growth, you have to challenge and change. And because I don't know, I can't tell anybody what their passion is. You have to find that out for yourself.
Yeah, I know.
And then go from there.
I was just going to dovetail on that real quickly. I loved speaking and being part of the speech class in high school. And every time I went to a seminar or somebody was speaking on stage, I would say, I could do that. I could do that. I would love to do that. And I said that my entire life. And I was a mother, and I was a wife, and I was a wife again, and then I was a mother again. And life got in the way. And 50 years later, I walked into a Toastmasters meeting. I had heard about Toastmasters 30 years ago, and I never walked into a meeting. I finally walked into a meeting, and I just found this passion for speaking that just was inside of me my entire life. And I just launched. I got really involved with Toastmasters. I started speaking, and then I started speaking outside of Toastmasters, and I just love it. It's what just sets me on fire. It absolutely just fills me up. But it's like you said, Marianne and Gayla, it's just trying something that, and I love what you said, what maybe reflect back to your childhood and something that really was exciting to you when you were a child, and think about that, and then say, how can I apply that in my life today, whatever it is. And so I found it through Toastmasters, learning how to speak, and now I'm on stages, and I think to myself, darn it, 50 years, I could have been doing this the whole time. But no, my life was my life. I loved being a mom, and I have great children, but now is my time, and I get to be a speaker. So you never know what that's going to be, but that, if you can focus on that and move towards that, then you'll find that missing piece of yourself, because that's what it sounds like. You feel like there's a missing piece. So go find that missing piece.
Because even this webinar, it's not always that easy. It's not just, I love to do these webinars, but you get nervous, it's a challenge, but you have to try it, because you have to learn, and eventually you get better and better and better. And I think that's, like you said, Vivian, you just have to try. Yeah. And sometimes you have to fail at it, sometimes you succeed at it, but that's what life is about.
Well, and the reason we're doing this webinar is the three of us share the same passion of wanting to help other people. That is the bottom line. We want to embark our knowledge and our experiences on others so that they can hopefully learn something, and hopefully that helps you, sparks you into doing something that you haven't thought about doing, or that you've wanted to do for a really long time. So there we go.
And just keep asking the questions in this webinar. Just keep asking the questions. If you didn't get enough answers, just keep asking. So we, as a unit, the three of us can help and answer the questions. I think just keep asking the questions. There are never too many questions.
We've been going for about 45 minutes now. We can maybe take one more question, or do we want to wrap it up? What do you ladies think?
Well, one of the things that I just wanted to say is I think this is a good place to wrap up. But what I want to say is it's okay if it's scary. I mean, you know, my experience in becoming a somebody who speaks to audiences and who's out there in the public is that's not anything I ever wanted to do. I was scared to death of people. I was a huge introvert. I, as a child, would hide behind my mother's skirts. Literally, I would not even say hello to anybody. And so this is like the first time I had a speaking engagement, I thought I was going to like throw up because it was terrifying to me. So sometimes when we take a step and we make a change in our life, it's scary. And it's not comfortable, just like Marianne said, you know, it's not always comfortable when you put yourself out there or you try something new. You have to realize that you might fail at that. And listen, the only people who don't fail are people who don't do anything. I failed a lot of stuff, you know, in my life, and that's okay because when you try something, it's not about you. You know, you could put your best effort in. And I guess the last thing I would just say about that is if you're not sure, go volunteer. So it's, you know, volunteer to do something. Go to an animal shelter, volunteer at the animal shelter if you like animals. It might give you a clue what you want to do. Maybe you want to work there in the future or whatever, you know, be an intake person or whatever, or then maybe you do that and you find out you don't like it. So volunteering in something you think you might be interested in is a good way to get a taste of it. But again, you know, even if it wasn't, certainly if what you end up doing has nothing to do with any passion you had as a child, that's fine. Certainly, you know, that wasn't the case for me. I evolved because, as you said, Vivian, I have a passion for helping women. I want to help women. I get what it's like to be in a relationship that's not fulfilling. I get that. And I have the complete opposite of that today. I have an amazing relationship with my husband of 15 years, and it brings me so much joy, and we allow each other to grow. So it was scary to go from X, you know, to Y. So I know I'm looking forward to continuing this next Friday, and I love the questions. I love the questions, and I love hearing what Marianne has to say, and I love hearing what Vivian has to say.
And if there are any more questions, I mean, about identity, I mean, we will have these webinars, but don't ever hesitate. You can always write to me privately, and I will answer any kind of questions a little bit more personal. I don't mind that at all.
Okay.
Oh, and also we have a Facebook group. I mean, that the purpose of our Facebook group is if you want to help other women, post your question in the Facebook group, and we'll answer in the Facebook group so everybody can see the answer. So that's another option that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And next week we'll be talking about what's next. But next week's webinar is going to be, our slant's going to be towards Gayla. It's going to be about love and relationships. So that'll be fun. And we will wrap it up for now. And thank you again so much for coming, ladies. Great questions. We went deep today. That was awesome.
Yes, I really liked it.
Yep. And we will see you next week, same time, 10 o'clock on Friday. And have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.